Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry to make you wait for so long on Friday afternoon. You never know what's happening here. But we've got 4 different groups this afternoon. We're going to try and move through these swiftly and get everybody out for the weekend. We're going to start this afternoon with the University of Maryland Global Campus. Ian Klein is the budget analyst. We have Dr. Gregory Fowler, President of the University of Maryland Global Campus, and Mr. Joe Sergi, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, UMGC. We'll start with the analyst and then ask for your remarks. Oh, I might say, before we get started, we have people going back and forth to committees with different bills and that kind of thing, so we're just going to keep rolling, whether they're here or not. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We're going to go ahead and get started on page 4 with Exhibit 1, which shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2016 to 2021. Total undergraduate enrollment decreased by 1,980 students, or 4.2% from fall 2020 to 2021. As illustrated in the exhibit, all categories had declines, with continuing students having the largest decline, falling by 1,757 students. UMGC attributed the overall decline to students returning to in-person instruction, as well as a technical problem with the U.S. Army's registration portal that prevented soldiers from registering for courses for almost an entire year. This problem has since been remediated. Total undergraduate enrollment in fall 2021 reached 45,100 students. Exhibit 2 on page 5 looks at UMGC's FTE enrollment relative to the University System of Maryland as a whole. As shown in Exhibit 2, FTE's enrollment at UMGC represents a growing share of total USM FTE's enrollment. From 2016 through 2021, UMGC represented the largest share of FTE's enrollment for USM, with College Park representing the second largest portion. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides the second and third year retention rates. From 2010 through 2015, the second year retention rate remained fairly level between 68 and 71%. However, from 2015 to 2019, that figure dropped by 10% and totaled 61% in 2019. In 2020, that number rebounded, reaching 69%, which UMGC attributes to new intervention strategies, including the elimination of developmental education, as well as strengthening math courses with adaptive learning resources, as well as the development of the Professional and Career Exploration, or PACE, First Term Experience course. As is also seen in the exhibit, the third year retention rate has generally mirrored the second year retention rate, albeit at a slightly lower level. Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate has steadily increased, reaching 32% for the 2015 cohort. The 4-year graduation rate had been growing from 2009 through 2015, but has fallen for the last 2 cohorts, totaling 20% for the 2017 cohort. It should be noted, however, that these graduation rates are inclusive of first-time full-time students, which account for roughly 2% of the overall student population at UMGC. The vast majority of the UMGC student population are working adults and military personnel who take classes part-time or come with prior college experience. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Non-Pell eligible students graduate at higher rates than Pell eligible students in all of the identified categories. While Pell eligible full-time transfer students graduate at higher rates than both first-time full-time and part-time transfer Pell eligible students. Exhibit 6 on page 9 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $8.5 million in fiscal 2016 to $14.6 million in fiscal 2021. Merit scholarships totaled $11.1 million in fiscal 2021 alone. UMGC attributes the large percentage of the aid going to merit rather than need-based aid to the Maryland Completion Scholarship, which allows Maryland Community College graduates to transfer to UMGC to complete a bachelor's degree for under an additional $12,000 in total costs. This program is not need-based aid and accounts for the large amount of institutional aid that goes toward merit scholarships. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt and earnings for graduate by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 7 on page 10 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just under $13,500 for nursing majors to over $29,000 for public administration majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, nursing majors attained the highest median earnings, which totaled over $75,500. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 8 on page 11 provides an overall summary of the Federal Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, or HERF, spending by category, of which UMGC received $52.8 million. Of this funding, a minimum of $27.5 million was required to be spent on financial aid. As shown in the exhibit, UMGC plans to expend the remaining HERF by the conclusion of fiscal 2022. Exhibit 9 on page 12 provides a breakdown of the spending by HERF category. In total, as previously mentioned, UMGC plans to spend $27.5 million on student aid, $21.7 million on revenue recovery, $2.7 million on academic and technological expenses, and $900,000 on testing, PPE, and other COVID-related expenditures. The President should comment on how the institution is planning to return to an operational structure in fiscal 2023 without the assistance of federal emergency relief funding, should pandemic-related expenditures or impacts continue into the 2022-2023 academic year. Exhibit 10 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 21 to 2022. The largest dollar change was in public service, which grows by $9.9 million. The increase reflects spending associated with the UMGC Inn and Conference Center in fiscal 2022, which was offset in fiscal 2021 due to receiving CARES Act funding. Operation and maintenance of plant grows by $9.3 million due to the shuttering of buildings during fiscal 2021 compared to a full fiscal 2022 expense budget assumption. The next largest change comes from institutional support, which decreases by $6 million as a result of a reduction to ERP project funds in fiscal 2022 as projects are finishing. Academic support also declines, decreasing by $1 million as a result of a reduced startup costs in fiscal 2022 for military sites that were new in fiscal 2021. The proposed fiscal 2023 budget is found in Exhibit 11 on page 15 and identifies that total state funds increased by $7.6 million. As is shown on page 16, the additional state support provides $3.6 million to restore the fiscal 2021 BPW cut, $3.3 million for personnel adjustments, and $600,000 for various operating expenses. Exhibit 12 on page 17 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratios for these levels have remained roughly stable over this period. The impact of the pandemic, however, can be seen in fiscal 2021, with other unrestricted revenue representing only 1% of total revenue. An update on the national marketing campaign can be found on pages 20 and 21. The DLS operating budget recommended action is found on page 19, and that is to see the University System of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations. With that, I conclude my presentation and would be happy to answer questions.
I don't see any questions. Great job. Thanks, Ian. Okay, Dr. Fowler, welcome.
Thank you, Chairperson King, and to the members of the subcommittee. Thanks. It's my inaugural visit here, so nice to meet all of you, and hope they get a chance to spend some time with you face-to-face over the next period of time.
Absolutely.
As you know, I'm Greg Fowler, President of the University of Maryland Global Campus, and of course, I'm joined here by Joseph Sergi, who's our Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. And we also want to thank Ian Klein, of course, for his help, guidance, and expertise over the last period of time. So moving forward, I'll try to give you a summary of my remarks as opposed to trying to read anything too long.
Good Friday afternoon plan.
So a lot of the details Ian already covered, so I'll just go to a couple of things that are really focus in on the fact that, yes, we right now, certainly in Maryland, serve about 90,000 students, and of course 90,000 UMGC alumni live here within the state currently. More than 34,000 Marylanders attended UMGC in FY21. Some 5,600 Marylanders earned their UMGC degrees during that last year alone. The big things I want to point out are that UMGC enrolls more Maryland Community College transfer students than any other institution in the state. And through this Maryland Completion Scholarship, which Ian just mentioned, it allows eligible community college graduates to complete a UMGC bachelor's degree for $12,000 or less. Last year alone, we awarded some 4,179 scholarships valued at almost $7.8 million in that case. The PG3D scholarship program is another one I'd like to just bring to your attention. It launched in 2017 and allows eligible high-performing Prince George's County public school students to earn dual credits at Prince George's Community College while they're also getting their diploma and subsequently a bachelor's degree from UMGC, all for $10,000 or less. Students who qualify for that can actually financially pay nothing. This year, the first 3 graduates of that program are going to graduate, and we expect to see them graduate in May and walk across the stage. Today, 184 other students are enrolled in that program as well. Our population tends to be very much a diverse one. Some 66% of undergraduates are first-generation college students. Some 44% have dependent children. Our population is about 28% African-American, 5% Asian American, 14% Hispanic students, and 35% white, with 15.3% identifying as Native American, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, or some other. For us moving forward, the changes that we're seeing are going to be very much tied to the enrollment demographics. Some of those changes are going to have some substantial issues as we continue to move forward. Our university continues, however, to be committed to the military populations around the globe, and with those 150 locations that we have. We continue to also be a leader in the workforce development here in Maryland, and we want to assist near completers in earning credentials or degrees, and we are committed to supporting underserved populations as we move forward. These objectives require the university to maintain a cutting-edge workforce and 24/7 service across multiple platforms. With this in mind, I just want to leave with, of course, some of the big things you may have seen recently, just as of yesterday. You may have seen that we are now partnering with Amazon in a new way to actually help a lot of students get their full tuition paid. We will continue to try to build more partnerships as we move forward with Amazon, Wiley, Uber, Mantech, and other corporations across the board. With that, I stand ready for questions.
I do have one question.
Sure.
If there is a typical student taking the online courses, how many courses are they taking at one time?
Two.
Two? Okay.
It can be 1 to 2 at a time. Because of the term structure, there are overlapping terms, so they'll either start with one, possibly join an overlapping term for 2.
Okay.
But generally, it's no more than 2.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Wow. We don't have any questions this afternoon. That's great.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming over. Okay, next we'll go to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Sarah Baker is our analyst. Yeah, Dr. Fielder, you've been here a lot.
Yes, I have. Enjoyable.
Yes, and you have a whole panel here with you that you can introduce when it's your time up there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to start with MHEC's briefing series on remediation and the impact on student success. This past year, MHEC released the 5th in a series focusing on first-year outcomes and looking at students who earned at least 20 or 30 credits and had a GPA of 2.0. And if you recall, in order to maintain eligibility for federal financial aid, students need to maintain a 2.0 GPA and complete at least 24 credits. Now shown on Exhibit 1, this shows the percentage of students who had a GPA of at least 2.0 after the first year. And as you can see, those who are assessed as needing remediation and completing a developmental course were more likely to earn a 2.0 compared to those who did not. Exhibit 2 shows the students who were assessed as needing remediation and completing their coursework were more likely to complete at least 24 hours of credit than those who did not. However, you see the percentages drop off when looking at those who earned at least 30 credits. So it'd be interesting to see if these trends regarding credit completions persist into the second year, especially for those who receive state financial aid, in which to remain eligible for full award must complete 30 credits by the end of their second year. Moving on to distance learning enrollments. As shown in Exhibit 3, in fall 2020, there was a significant increase in the number of distance education enrollments at Maryland institutions. Now, this was driven by institutions limiting the number of students on campus and most courses being taught remotely. I'm sorry, I didn't get to that exhibit. So you can see the increase. Exhibit 4 shows the top 5 Maryland institutions with the highest exclusive online enrollments comparing fall 2019 to 2020. Enrollment at those institutions did not have strong online presence, saw a dramatic increase in their enrollments as they moved to online classes. So a comparison of the 20 data to the out years will show if there's a shift in how students prefer to learn, and be interesting to see if those institutions will incorporate lessons learned from fall 2020 to increase access to its programs by offering more online courses. Exhibit 5 shows the number of Maryland students enrolled exclusively in distance education at out-of-state institutions, and not surprisingly, enrollments increased almost 48% in 2020. Turning to student loan debt tax credit program in Exhibit 6. At the start of the program and in 2019 tax years, the number of applications increased almost by 240%. This is due to expanding the loan debt to include graduate debt in 2018 and allowing for online submissions of applications in 2019. However, applications have since decreased by almost 36%, which is due to federal suspension of the student loan payments, and this is expected to resume on May 1st. Overall, over 84% of the applicants were eligible to see a recredit in 21, and those not eligible for in-state tuition increased by over 35%. We asked the Secretary to comment on efforts being taken to increase awareness of the programs, especially with the anticipated resumption of loan repayments this year. Exhibit 7 shows the value of the tax credit over the years, and with the credit for those eligible for in-state tuition increasing to over $1,600. And Exhibit 8 compares outstanding loan balances of recipients, and as you see, the inclusion of the graduate debt resulted in those with debt over $100,000 increased from 3.7% of the recipients to over 20% in 2021. Now moving down to the budget, there are 4 proposed deficiencies that would provide over $4 million in general funds, including $1.9 million for the Workforce Readiness Grant Program that provides matching funds to community colleges to improve campus technology, and $1 million to fund endowment for the Miller Director of Civil Engagement at Washington College. Moving to the allowance in Exhibit 9. Overall, the allowance provides MHEC with $188.9 million, of which 63% funds the Selinger program, and 16% goes towards general administration, and this includes the $22 million for attorney's fees as mandated in Chapter 41. Exhibit 10 shows the proposed budget, which increases by $49.2 million, or 35.2%. I want to note in personnel, there is funding for the 10 new positions as mandated in Chapter 41 for the Program Evaluation Unit. There's funding for various mandates, which total $53.5 million, and there's a $1 million increase for the Wellmobile for a new vehicle and increased operating costs. And there are decreases, include $2 million related to one-time costs in 2022 and the $4 million in the proposed deficiencies. Moving to Exhibit 11 and the Selinger formula. As you know, the funding is allocated on a per FTES enrollment at the eligible independent institutions. And while overall enrollment has grown, this is mainly attributed to an increase in graduate students. Between fall 2015 and 21, undergraduate enrollment at the independent institutions has fallen by 9% or over 2,300 students, with the largest decline of over 1,000 occurring between 19 and 20. The declining enrollment has led to a 15.7% decline in the number of undergraduate degrees awarded. Additionally, in terms of helping the state meet its 55% completion goal, the independent institutions have only met or exceeded their target only twice since 2011 and fell short by over 1,000 degrees in 20 and 21. Exhibit 12 shows a distribution of funding by institutions. Funding for Selinger increases by $29.8 million in 23 to $118.6 million. Since 21, the funding has more than doubled, and this is due to 2 factors. In 22, the formula was funded at the statutory percent of 15.5%, which is up from 10.3% the prior year. And in 23, while funding is still at 15.5%, funding per FTES at the selected public 4 years increased over 26%, 26.2% due to the annualizations of the 22 general salary increases, the 23 salary increases, and the restoration of USM's 21 BPW reductions. Now, given more than the doubling of the funding for Selinger and the steady decline in undergraduate enrollment and failure to meet the degree production goal, DLS recommends restricting the $29.8 million of the additional state funding pending a report from MICUA detailing how institutions will use this increase in state aid to support the state's higher education goals. So moving on, Exhibit 13 shows the funding of educational grants, which decreased by $3 million. And this is due to the removal of one-time funding for the VaxU Scholarship Program and a grant to Montgomery College and the 3 proposed deficiencies. Declines are partly offset by $1.5 million to fund mandated programs, including the Teacher Quality and Diversity Grant Program. I just want to note in personnel, there's a deficiency that provided 5 positions in '22, and the allowance provides for another 5 positions, providing the 10 positions as mandated in Chapter 41. Turning to the first issue of late JCR reports, overall 10 reports were requested from MHEC. None of them were submitted on time, with reports being submitted anywhere from 22 to 178 days late. In addition, MHEC is required to submit the state plan for higher education by July 1st every 4 years, and the 21-25 plan was supposed to be submitted last July and is yet to be submitted. We asked the Secretary to comment on why the reports have not been submitted on time and why MHEC is yet to submit the state plan. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ian for the 529 plans.
And thank you very much, Sarah. So Exhibit 15 on page 24 shows the total number of applications for fiscal years 2018 through 2022. The number of completed applications for fiscal 2022 increased by 4,349, or 14.3% over fiscal 2021. However, the number of eligible applications decreased by 2,536, or 9.5%. Ineligible applications increased tremendously, growing by 6,885, or 177.6%. The decrease in eligible applications and the increase in ineligible applications was primarily the result of 2 pieces of legislation. Chapter 538 of 2020, which limited a qualified beneficiary to 2 state matching contributions per year, and Chapter 436 of 2021, which made further alterations to the program as described on pages 24 and 25, both of which were created to ensure the original intent of the legislation was adhered to and to minimize program abuse. Despite these changes, individuals have identified new strategies to maximize receiving state matching contributions. The Executive Director should comment on new strategies developed, including the opening of custodial accounts to maximize state matching contributions, and how these actions impact the state matching program. While the funding needed to ensure that all eligible applications received a state match increased from fiscal 2018 to 2021, as shown in Exhibit 16 on page 26, because of the legislative changes previously mentioned, a total of $11 million will be needed in fiscal 2022 to ensure that all eligible applicants receive a matching contribution, a decline of $1.5 million when compared to fiscal 2021. A proposed fiscal 2022 deficiency appropriation of $912,000 is included in the budget to ensure that all eligible applicants receive a state matching contribution. The program is then level funded at the fiscal 2022 total when including the deficiency appropriation for fiscal year 2023. Exhibit 17 on page 27 shows the state matching contributions provided by taxable income level from fiscal 2018 through 2022. Maryland 529 has advertising strategies designed to entice participation in the matching program with a focus on the lowest tax filing groups. As shown in the light blue bars, 46% of total eligible applications in fiscal 2022 came from these tax bracket groupings. Single filers with with an income of under $50,000 and joint filers with an income of under $75,000. Joint filers with an income of under $75,000 decreased by 12% when compared to fiscal 2022, when compared to 2021. And once again, Maryland 529 attributes this decline to the impact of Chapter 538 and Chapter 436. Exhibit 18 on page 28 shows the jurisdiction breakdown of applications received. As shown in the exhibit, applications from Baltimore City continue to represent the plurality of applications at 9,597, or 28% of total applications in fiscal 2022. When combined, applications from Baltimore and Montgomery counties totaled just under 11,500 and represented a third of total applications. When applications from Baltimore City are included in that total, these 3 jurisdictions alone encompass just under 2/3 of the total applications received for fiscal 2022. The decline in applications from Baltimore City was again attributed to the impact of Chapter 538 and Chapter 436. All jurisdictions, with the exception of Baltimore City and Dorchester and Garrett counties, experienced increases in applications in fiscal 2022. I will now pass it back to Sarah.
Okay, and I will turn to our recommendations. And the first is the restrictions of funds pending a report on the status of corrective actions of the 5 repeat audit findings. The findings are related to financial aid and community colleges, but since these programs don't have administrative funds to restrict, the language restricts the funds from MHEC's administrative budget. The next 2 are annual narratives. The first one requesting institutional aid by EFC category. The third one is a request on the progress towards a 55% completion goal. And the last one restricts the increase in Salinger funds until a report is submitted. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions for Sarah? I think we're good. Dr. Fielder, take it away.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here. First time seeing everyone in 2 years. Needless to say, the last 2 years, the pandemic has magnified the extreme need to pay attention to operating budgets and operating. It's shown the need for consistent communication that is focused, crisp, and timely. MHEC has played a key role in providing that as a conduit, as a collector, and a disperser of that information on what's happening on each campus at all times. That's taken a lot of time and effort, and that's in addition to what we do. But just like every other department, just like you've had to do, it's additional just to get it done. The state of higher ed is extremely strong. The state of Maryland is one of the tops in the United States, and it continues in that realm. With me today is Dr. Emily Dow, Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs, Aubrey Bascom, who is Director of Finance Administration. Jeff Newman is Assistant Secretary, and I believe Emily has a couple people to introduce that are new to the Senate and new to us relatively.
Sorry, if I may, we do just have a couple of new people in the audience that are part of our research staff that I'd like to introduce you to. They're critical to the work that we do for the data collection. Yushin Lin.
Have them stand so we can see
Oh,
who they are.
sure, absolutely. Yushin Lin and Alex Bolby. They're new within the past year and have really been able to hit the ground running and better understand our collections. And I think you'll see a lot of sophisticated, in-depth analyses coming your way on a variety of topics.
Great.
Thank you.
And one of the other keys of introducing them is the aspect of the reports being late. This is the first time since 19 that we've been fully staffed in the research department, and these are some truly fine professionals to join, and we're already doing more dashboard work, which is a different way to look at our information, that Sarah and Ian put together these wonderful tables to condense information. We're doing the same. So since you have our responses.
So does that mean that all the reports will be on time this year?
Pardon?
Does that mean that all the reports will be on time this year?
That is our goal, yes.
Okay.
And
I'm just jerking Jane a little bit.
No, that's fine. Well, I take it seriously
I know.
because when
We do too.
When Emily first started, our academic programs that have to have a 60-day time set in terms of when they're submitted by an institution and responded, the completion rate on time was 13.5%. It's now over 90%.
Good.
So our goal is continue to move that, recruiting top staff, keeping the staff, and doing the best that we can. These reports, again, focused with what we had to do with compiling information for the pandemic, which took priority in some of these reports. The reports are important, but at the same time, operating and keeping the institutions going is very important.
Okay, any questions? I think you're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe and stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your support.
Oh, I do have one more witness, yes. Anthony Reiner with MHEC. No. Was he here to testify this afternoon? No? Sarah Fiddler. I don't have that list.
Thanks so much. Sorry, yeah, the secretary did invite me up at the panel,
Okay.
but I felt like I should give him some space, so thank
Okay,
you.
is Aaron Leighton here too? Okay, if you want to come up to the table, you can be next. Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator King and members of the subcommittee. I'm Sarah Fiddler. I am the president of the Maryland Independent College and University Association. We really appreciate the long-standing state support of our students and our schools, and we are encouraged that the budget fully funds the Joseph A. Salinger program this year. We respectfully ask that you protect this funding and enable us to bring you the return on investment that we know you've come to expect from us. MICUA represents 13 diverse state-aided institutions of higher education. We serve 58,000 students in the state. We operate throughout Maryland in 180 different locations, and in some local jurisdictions, a MICUA institution is the only four-year institution of higher education. 24% of our students are low-income or Pell eligible, and almost half are students of color. We offer more than 1,700 approved academic programs. We award more than 15,000 degrees per year, and this is 30% of all the degrees that are awarded in the state. Our graduates are nurses, pharmacists, occupational therapists, teachers, engineers, and experts in cybersecurity, just to name a few. Our graduation and retention rates are high, and they outperform our national cohort peers. The MICUA institutions use 85 to 90% of the Sellinger funding on financial aid for Maryland students. So in fiscal 21, when the allocation was $59 million, this meant that we were able to spend $54 million to ensure that Maryland students have access to their choice of institution that will best fit their interests, academic goals, and needs. This year, with a $118 million allocation, we anticipate spending over $100 million of that on financial aid for Maryland students. We also spend institutional-based aid, and this is to help bridge the affordability gap. In fiscal 21, we spent over $320 million for this purpose. So we thank the Department of Legislative Services for a thoughtful review, and we note for you that they recommend, as Sarah mentioned, restricting $30 million of the Sellinger appropriation due to declining enrollment and result in fewer degrees produced, until and unless MICUA produces a report that provides information to you regarding efforts to promote equitable access to higher education, ways in which we target financial aid to low-income and minority students, closing the achievement gap, and helping the state to meet workforce needs. We have all of this information already, and it's publicly available on our website. It's also included in detail in my testimony. So we urge you to reject this DLS recommendation. Despite the impacts of the pandemic, the overall enrollment at the MICUA institutions has remained steady over the last several years. Some of our schools have seen a declining undergraduate enrollment, but I note for you that some of our schools have seen record high increases in undergraduate enrollment this fall. Some of this increase is attributable to the fact that a student who wants to remain in state and go to a MICUA institution, if not attending a MICUA institution, will often go out of state. We have also bolstered our efforts at recruitment, specifically of lower income and minority students, and these efforts have been successful. So we're appreciative to all of you for helping to make this possible. I also note that our graduate program enrollment is largely increasing, and this leads to workforce credential contributions that increase the knowledge-based economy in Maryland and benefit the entire state. Regarding degree production, the MICUA institutions actually overperform in the areas of the shortage fields that are identified in the DLS analysis. These include STEM, education, and healthcare fields. MICUA schools have 16% of the state's college students, yet we produce 26% of the STEM graduates, 56% of all education degrees, and 32% of health professional degrees, which includes nursing. We have increased our percentage of production of these degrees every year since 2018. And this equals about 15,000 skilled members of the workforce.
Sir, can you begin to wrap it up, please?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to call your attention to some exhibits in my testimony. On page 4, I've given you graphic representation of how we have made great efforts to increase the number of students of color on our campuses, and as you'll see, there's been a steady increase. 5 of the MICUA institutions are majority minority institutions, and 10 MICUA institutions have representation of minority students of 30% or more. Also on page 5 of my written testimony, I provided you with a graphic representation of how MICUA institutions compare to national cohort peers in terms of graduation of both Pell recipients and students of color. And here you'll see that our 6-year graduation rates exceed the national averages in all groups. 74% for all students, 62% for Pell recipients, and 68% for minority students. So, Madam Chair, you have my written testimony. I've also attached testimony from several MICUA institutions regarding how they specifically use their funds on campus. We're so appreciative and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fiddler, just a quick question. So you're fine with the reporting, you just don't want the $29 million restriction?
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
actually, just to let you know, the House Subcommittee asked us to package the information that we have in a way that tracks, and we're working on that, and we hope to have that for you soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Alford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Fiddler, for being here. We all appreciate the value MACUA institutions bring to the state. Just two quick questions. This is a significant increase because it's a very good budget year. Will you continue to use 90% of Salinger funds for need-based aid for Maryland students? Is that the plan with this increased aid?
So each institution uses a different amount. 90% is an average. And on an
Okay.
annual basis, yes, the commitment from my institutions is to use between 85 and 90%.
Okay.
Some of my institutions use 100%, some of them use closer to 75. So it averages out. But yes, that's always been our commitment.
Okay, and is that broken down in the report that you want to voluntarily give us?
Yes, and it's
Okay.
attached to the testimony.
Okay.
If you look, Senator, each
Okay.
school that provided separate testimony tells you exactly how many,
Okay.
how much they received, how much they used for financial aid, and what that percentage is.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I think that, oops, we got one more here. Ms. Erin Leighton.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, for the record, I'm Erin Leighton, Executive Director for Maryland 529. I will keep this very brief, I promise. You have my written testimony. The state contribution program is very successful, and as part of that, we've seen some abuses and some shocking uses of it. Last year, there was during session, there was a bill that was passed that eliminated a lot of those and closed those loopholes. An unexpected result was increasing custodial accounts as a result of working around and avoiding that cap to the tune of 800%. So there is a bill pending right now, thank you Senator Elfraith, with Senate Bill 411 and House Bill 4444, that will close that loophole and require an account holder to be 18. So if you have any questions.
Okay. Senator Alford?
I hate to not ask a question, Madam Chair, but I have to give Ms. Leighton a tremendous amount of credit. She is one of the best stewards of public tax dollars we have working for Maryland state government, and she is watching this like a hawk to make sure that this incredibly important program is free from waste, fraud, and abuse. And I just want to thank her for her efforts. It means a lot to us, particularly appropriators. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Next on the agenda this afternoon, we have the Maryland African American Museum Corporation. Emily Haskell is our analyst. We have Ms. Terry Freeman, the Executive Director of the Museum Corporation, and Ms. Alexis Davis, Chief Operating Officer, and Ms. Rachel Graham, Director of External Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Emily Haskell, and I'll be presenting the budget analysis for the Maryland African American Museum Corporation. In the budget summary, you can see the museum's budget increases by 2.5% in fiscal 2023 to just under $5 million. The state general fund grant increases by $41,000 to an even $2 million, and privately raised revenues are expected to increase by $83,000. Exhibit 1 shows the corporation's revenues and expenditures for fiscal 2019 through an estimate for fiscal 2023. An MOU with DBM includes a provision that the museum will match the state grant with its own earnings, although DBM has waived this requirement for fiscal 2020 through 2022 due to the pandemic. Revenues declined significantly during the pandemic, but the museum is expecting to meet the 50% match in each of fiscal 2022 and 2023. Exhibit 2 shows attendance at the museum, which you can also see has declined during the pandemic, with only about 16,700 visitors in fiscal 2021 due to closures and capacity restrictions. Museum attendance has started to increase in fiscal 2022, but is still below pre-pandemic levels. The museum has shifted operations to offer more virtual options, including making most programs available in hybrid format and conducting virtual school tours. And the museum plans to continue to offer digital versions for all future exhibits. Finally, the corporation is statutorily required to develop a strategic plan every 5 years. The plan was last updated in 2016, and DLS has asked the corporation to give an update on the status of the next strategic plan, which is currently under development. Finally, this page shows the DLS recommendation, which is to concur with the governor's allowance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Emily. Questions for Emily? No? Good job. Ms. Freeman?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to each of you. And thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to present with you this afternoon. I did attend last year's testimony. However, I had just gotten on the job probably about a week prior, so this really is my first time presenting after completing a full year at the Lewis Museum. You know, not unlike other entities, we have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, as Emily said, significantly decreased our general admissions, our school groups and field trips, and our facility rentals. That said, during the end of the third quarter and fourth quarters of fiscal 2021, the museum saw rapid attendance growth month over month through July 2021. Those numbers were still far lower, however, than pre-COVID numbers, but it did demonstrate to us that there was an appetite for people to get out and enjoy cultural activities. Being new to the museum community and to the local funding community here, most of my time around development and fundraising was spent making introductions, getting a sense of past and current relationships with the museum, and learning about the board of directors. I spent significant time meeting with other members of the arts and culture community as well as the civic organizations in Baltimore City. I agree with Emily's analysis of our fiscal year 2021 activity. One comment, however, I would like to clarify has to do with our digital offerings. The Analyst is correct that we have not been consistent in our reporting our virtual offerings. This has primarily been, however, due to significant staff turnover and, frankly, novel use of virtual technology, which began at the end of fiscal year 20 and has progressed to date. Going forward, we plan to offer hybrid programs, and we will provide consistent reporting of our virtual offerings and attendance. But if I may, I'd like to provide you really with a little bit of forward thinking on the museum, which is a lot easier since I was only there for 4 months of the last year that we are reporting on. I just mentioned staff turnover that had occurred in the past, leaving the museum when I got there with really a skeletal staff structure. I'm pleased to announce that I have hired a strong and talented team of senior managers. Alexis Davis, who has been there, is one of those senior managers, and Rachel Graham has recently joined us. They're very focused on the mission, and they're ready to really launch a new reemerged Lewis Museum. In my written testimony, I noted we have 5 strategic imperatives: operational effectiveness, brand awareness, educational excellence, community leadership, and organizational sustainability. These imperatives are the keys to our success, and we believe that they will make up the backbone of our soon-to-be-completed 5-year strategic plan. We have begun the process of strategic planning, working with a minority-owned firm out of Montgomery County, Maryland, called ETA. They've met with our strategic planning board committee, our staff, and will be conducting stakeholder focus groups. If you have been invited to one of those focus groups, we hope that you will participate, because everyone's voice is going to be very important as we move forward. ETA is going to distill this group feedback and prepare a report with suggestions on priorities, pluses, areas of concern, and areas of change. The board committee, working in conjunction with the staff, will develop a draft plan that will go to the full board for comment, and those comments will be incorporated and provide us with our working 5-year document. This document will be submitted to the appropriate legislative staff and will serve as our blueprint for fiscal years 23 through 28. We hope that that will be completed in May. We anticipate the redesign and renovation of our permanent exhibition. This exhibition tells the important history of African American contributions throughout the state since its founding. The content is excellent, but the delivery is dated and less than engaging. We intend to embark upon a capital campaign to complete a full renovation and to present to Maryland and the region and the nation a new Lewis Museum for our 20th anniversary, which will be June 2025. The exhibit will be multimedia, recognize those expected historic figures, but incorporate contemporary cultural impacts African American Marylanders have had on art, sport, business, medicine, education, and politics. We want a museum that is going to engage our typical museum goers, but also serve as a draw for folks who don't typically go to museums. We want to continue to work collaboratively, and we want to expand our funding base. The long and short of this is that we believe that Maryland needs the African American Museum, that is the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, and we need the support of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I have two on here. On the audit findings on page 7, it said the museum did not always comply with its written procurement policy regarding obtaining written proposals and obtaining management approvals. And finding 2, adequate accountability and controls were not established over the museum collections of art and historical artifacts.
So I'm going to let Alexis address that. I would like to say one of the issues, though, is separation of duties. Because of the limited number of staff, it's very difficult to have the separation of duties that would be required for the collections area.
Okay.
So that's a part of the explanation.
Okay.
Alexis, do you want to address the first point, though?
Sure, and if it's all right to remove this mask just to talk, the terms of...
If you were here Monday, you could remove it completely. But we're still hanging in there.
But by Friday you have to do something different. But yes, in terms of not always complying with procurement, a couple of things. One is that the audit covered about 3.5 years. And during the 3.5 years, there was definitely a staff shortage situation. So, and in that process, and also as part of the policy is if it's a 3-year contract and you made a mistake in year 1 because you were short on staff, recovering from that is impossible. So you wind up getting that you got dinged for something when none of us may have been there. So
Okay.
we have definitely, and we've been working very hard, and we said we are adhering to our policy right
That's all I
now,
need to
moving
know.
forward.
I just need to know that you're aware of it.
Yes.
Yeah, we're aware.
Yes.
And we're definitely moving forward with that, and we're hoping to be perfect when the auditors return again.
Okay, yeah.
All right, that's our goal. In terms of collections, Terry's already addressed it. It was a staffing shortage, and we've developed the policy, and now we're hiring staffing to make sure they can adhere to the policy we submitted.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. No more questions? Okay,
Thank
thank you for
you.
coming over. Okay, last but certainly not least this afternoon, we have Maryland Technology Development Corporation. Emily Haskell is our analyst. Mr. Troy LaMail Stovall is the CEO. And you've got a whole list of people with you here today. I'm going to let Emily do the analysis, and then we'll have you speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is the operating budget analysis for the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, or TEDCO. In the budget summary on page 1, you can see TEDCO's budget decreases by about 1% in fiscal 2023 to $28 million. This is a little misleading, as general funds actually increase by almost $7.5 million, or 35%. The increase is primarily due to legislation from last session, including an increase of $4 million in funding for the Builder Program, $750,000 for the new Inclusion Fund, and $500,000 for a pilot program in the Maryland Innovation Initiative. Funding for the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund also increases by $1.8 million to a total of $10 million. Special funds for the Maryland Venture Fund are eliminated in the fiscal 2023 allowance, as TEDCO invested the last of the funds raised through the Invest Maryland tax credit auction in fiscal 2020. The fiscal 2022 special funds, shown in yellow on the chart, are expected to be canceled during the closeout process, as TEDCO did with its fiscal 2021 special fund appropriation. While TEDCO will continue to reinvest returns through the Maryland Venture Fund, these expenditures will no longer be reflected in the state budget. TEDCO is expecting additional funding from the American Rescue Plan for the State Small Business Credit Initiative, which is not included in this chart or in the analysis due to the timing of the announced funding. Maryland is receiving about $200 million in federal funds for the program, which will be jointly administered by the Department of Housing and Community Development, Commerce, and TEDCO. TEDCO's share of the funding is expected to be nearly $50 million, and TEDCO plans to spend those funds over the course of about 7 years through its venture capital programs, seed funds, and social impact funds. Looking back at the chart, you can see that TEDCO also previously administered some COVID-19 relief funding in fiscal 2021. That funding consisted of 2 programs. The first was the Rubric program, which stands for Rural and Underserved Business Recovery from the Impact of COVID-19. This program used $5 million from the Rainy Day Fund to provide grants to 45 early-stage companies that were impacted by the pandemic. Exhibit 1 shows the recipients of this funding by jurisdiction and industry. TEDCO also used some of this funding to provide mentoring services to businesses in Baltimore City and Prince George's County through a new Urban Business Innovation Initiative pilot. The second relief program was known as the Agricultural and Rural Rebuild Challenge, which was created through the Relief Act and was funded with $1.5 million in federal funds from the American Rescue Plan. TEDCO used these funds for grants of up to $200,000 to 7 businesses across the state in the engineering, biotech, and agriculture industries. Next, I'll go over a couple new programs in TEDCO's fiscal 2023 budget. Chapter 180 established the Inclusion Fund, which is designed to provide seed investments to businesses owned by economically disadvantaged individuals that have grown beyond the pre-seed stage where Builder would usually fund them. The allowance includes $750,000 for the Inclusion Fund's first year, which TEDCO anticipates will serve about 2 or 3 companies. In addition to the investment, these companies will receive mentoring services provided through TEDCO. Next, the Maryland Innovation Initiative, or MII, is a program that was created in 2012 to assist with the commercialization of university research. The main MII program is level funded in fiscal 2023 at $5.3 million and serves 5 of the state's research universities, with each participating university providing matching funds of $100,000 to $200,000. Chapter 697 of 2021 established a new pilot program to expand MII to 2 additional schools, Bowie State and Frostburg State Universities. TEDCO's funding for the pilot totals $500,000 in fiscal 2023, and each university will contribute $50,000 in matching funds annually in fiscal 2023 and 2024. TEDCO is working with each school to develop programming for the pilot based on what each university wants to get out of the program. I'm going to skip over key observation number 1 since I already talked about the Maryland Venture Fund. The second observation in the analysis relates to the Builder Fund, which, as I mentioned, is expanding due to legislation. TEDCO has received $1 million annually for the program since fiscal 2020, and Chapter 415 of 2021 mandates increasing appropriations over time, including the $5 million in the fiscal 2023 allowance, and then going up to $6.2 million in fiscal 2024, followed by $7.5 million annually after that. TEDCO plans to use 80% of the $5 million allowance for awards, with 10% going towards supportive services for businesses in the program, such as mentorship and loaned executives, and then the remaining 10% will be for TEDCO's administrative expenses. TEDCO is increasing its outreach related to the program in anticipation of the increase in funding. Exhibit 5 shows the awards given out so far through the Builder program, as well as the preceding pilot program. From fiscal 2018 to 2021, TEDCO has supported 25 minority and women-owned businesses in these 7 jurisdictions. Finally, this page shows the DLS recommendation to concur with the governor's allowance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nice job. Thank you very much. Okay. This is our last one this afternoon. Yes, I hear that reverberating from the walls over there. Okay. Troy, welcome.
Welcome. Good to be seen and be live.
Nice to have you.
And we will be very efficient, knowing that we're the last ones on a Friday afternoon. So
right.
Thank you for your time today, Chairman.
It helps your budget a whole lot. I'm only kidding.
I'm about to say, don't put that out there. Well, again, thank you for allowing us to come before you today. My name is Troy Lamel Stovall, and I humbly serve as the CEO of TEDCO, where we identify, invest in, and help grow Maryland-based early-stage technology firms. I can't thank Emily Haskell enough for her great analysis. Thank you, and the time that she spent with our team. So thank you for your time. I would also appreciate the funding the governor has provided. But as we will discuss shortly, scale is critical, and the sooner we can reach the scale needed to be faster, and we can ensure that the state meets the long-term competitive nature that we think the state should have. You have our written statement, but allow me a few minutes in that to talk about 3 S's, those 3 S's being scaling, stitching, and storytelling. But I'm also going to introduce a 4 S to you today, and that one is called stickiness. So let me start with scale. COVID has accelerated the role technology plays in how we live, work, and play and engage. That acceleration requires an acceleration or scaling of our fiscal investments. Other states and many countries are scaling their fiscal investments to not only meet that pace, but frankly be seen as that next place where that innovation, or should I say to us today, where jobs and firms can locate and succeed. That second S, after we've done the scaling, is also about ensuring access to non-fiscal resources like wet labs, maker spaces, legal resources, biohubs, 3D printing, and biomanufacturing, to name just a few. It should not matter the zip code an entrepreneur or innovator is located in, they must have access to resources that are locally accessible and highly effective. After we scale and after we stitch, to be that next place, it's critical that others know about these resources, and that storytelling must be data-informed. And that data-informed storytelling should lead to more resources which can be used to scale, stitch, and storytell even more. But I told you there was a fourth S, and that fourth S is stickiness, because that's the end game. We must create an environment in Maryland that encourages, promotes, and elevates entrepreneurship and innovation that begins and remains in Maryland. We must create a higher level of stickiness by investing in a scaled and stitched set of fiscal and non-fiscal resources that make leaving the state a tough decision, and we storytell in a way that brings increased Maryland-based fiscal resources. So I thank you again for the time on this Friday afternoon on your support, and allow me to introduce our chairman of our board, Omar Muhammad, who's of Morgan State University.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Great afternoon, Madam Chair and committee. Omar Muhammad, Morgan State University again. Just want to thank you and say that we have one of our portfolio companies in the written testimony, Julie Melnick of Sky Squad. Thank you. Sky Squad. And she represents one of our portfolio companies, and she's a woman entrepreneur as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
If not,
Happy Friday afternoon.
we got a couple more. If you don't,
Okay.
Give me a second.
We can do it.
Allow me to introduce our friends. Thank you, Omar. Our friends from the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund, the executive director, and she's going to introduce her guests.
Okay.
You some more chairs?
Thank you. Chair King, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself and a few members of my stem cell community today. My name is Amrita Jayashankar. I'm the executive director of the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund. I've been with MSCRF for over 5 years, but my training is as a stem cell scientist in Maryland, so I know firsthand the impact that you've helped us create. So I want to thank you for your support of the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund and the scientists, companies, and patients that we support. You have our written testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I just want to introduce Dr. Luis Garza from Johns Hopkins.
Thanks. It's an honor to be here. My name is Luis Garza. I'm an MD, PhD, and a professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, where I see patients, I run clinical trials, and I also have a research laboratory. And a major focus of my work is on regenerative medicine. And the idea is, how can you harness your own body's intrinsic ability to heal itself using stem cells? And the idea is reshaping healthcare, and will be a third arm of medicine. There's medical doctors, surgical doctors, and soon there'll be gene and cell therapy doctors. The Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund, the MSCRF, has been essential to my work in this area. With them, we're starting with a simple clinical trial towards achieving this mission. We're trying to help amputees to use their prosthetics more often and without pain and skin breakdown by changing the skin at the stump site. In the same way that you didn't think twice when you put on your shoes this morning because your skin can adapt to pressure at your sole, we want to reprogram the skin at the stump site to be like palm and sole skin. In clinical trials supported by the Stem Cell Fund, we are testing if stem cells can do this. And this will help our patients by dramatically improving their quality of life. Since there's more than 2 million amputees, and many who have served our country and are now suffering, we want to help them. However, the important promise of our work is also creating a platform for general cell therapy. And the promise is that a single injection of cells can be routinely used to cure conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. And the Stem Cell Research Fund funding is vital to help Maryland maintain itself as a leader in this space, but not only for the benefit of our patients, but also the important economic activity in our state. And we can't do this without your support. With me today is John Carnett, one of the folks with limb loss who we're partnering to help us make these discoveries. So I'll turn it over to you, John.
Hi, my name is John Cornett. I am an amputee. I lost my left lower leg in 2018 due to a condition called a Charcot joint which is a condition that affects the feet, ankles, and knees of people who have this disease. And what happened to me is the bones in my left foot collapsed, and with that, I ended up with a blister on the bottom of my foot that got infected, and my foot was septic. And in talking with my wife, who was a nurse at Johns Hopkins, I am a nurse at Johns Hopkins. I've since retired, but we did some research and decided that an amputation was the best thing for me. So in 2018, my leg was amputated, and I was lucky enough to meet up with Dr. Garza and his team, and was chosen to be part of one of their studies. And what I would like to see happen is to have these studies continue and funded. There is hope with stem cells that our stumps can be more like the bottom of your foot and everybody else's foot here, which makes it so much easier to walk on a prosthetic limb. I think that's about all I have to say. If anybody has a question.
Thanks, John.
Senator Zucker.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a quick observation. I just wanted to let you know that last year there was a $1 million reduction in stem cell funding, and this committee went ahead and found $1 million and told the governor of the state that he can only spend it on stem cell research, and that's what happened. So, you know, Madam Chair, that's just another example of sort of how invested the state is in terms of
Absolutely.
this critical technology.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who's next?
Thank you. So outside of stem cell, we also have the Maryland Innovation Initiative, and I have the board chairman, and he has a guest with him as well.
And I truly am standing between you and the end of the day, so
No pressure, no pressure.
No, I feel none at all. I am Bob Hollenbeck. I have had the distinction and the pleasure of being the chair of this initiative since its founding, and it's thoroughly been a rewarding experience because the things that the money that you provide us is doing critical work in bringing technologies across all of the institutions into the public. It is creating jobs. We have wonderful, wonderful companies that we are creating. And I'd like to introduce Ken Malone, who's going to tell you about some of those.
Sure. I'm Ken Malone. I'm the Executive Officer of Early Charm Ventures. Early Charm creates, owns, and operates ventures that convert science into revenue. We have gone into universities 31 times, licensed technology, and created companies. Of those 31 companies in Baltimore, 7 of them received Maryland Innovation Initiative funding. Those 7 companies, on average, outperformed the rest of our portfolio by 2x. That's nice in and of itself, but of those 7 companies, they weren't all tremendously successful. In fact, some of them were tremendous failures financially. All of them were tremendously successful at education. The young people that we had in those companies learned how to manage IP and how to turn it into products and understood and learned from that process. They have since gone out into the community and started their own companies and oftentimes stayed with us to start other companies. In fact, if I look across my entire portfolio of 31 companies, half of them are being run by people that cut their teeth because of MII. Those companies outperform the rest of my portfolio by 4x. So it really is not, MII really is not about picking winners and losers of companies. It's about education. It's a tremendous program, and I would love to see it 10x'd. Thank you.
Thank you. We would too.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Thank you very much.
Have a
Thanks
good
for
week.
waiting, and I'm sorry you were last, but someone has to be.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.